Hi everybody and welcome back to the painting channel. Today it's a watercolor. It's all about a little village that's really close to my home and my studio. So join me now. Let's see how we get on. Hi everybody, welcome back. And as I said just now, it's all about a little watercolor about a small village or hamlet just outside of where I live on the Romney MArshes called Burmarsh. Now I happened to be there about a year ago and I took some pictures in the May when all the beautiful white flowers of the cow passed in and the May blossom on some of the bushes was in its element. So I felt that it would make a great little video for you to watch today when I'm using things like masking fluid and things like that. So join me now and I'm sure you get something from it. I hope you do anyway. And as I always say, if you are watching this and you're not a subscriber, then please consider subscribing. It really does help grow my channel to a much bigger audience. And click that like button, click the bell icon too. It tells you when I upload new videos. And as always, if you want more, there is a live stream every Monday evening at 7 o'clock p.m. London time, and also my Patreon. Nip over there, all the details are under this and each and every video that you watch of mine, and it gives you so much more from me on my Patreon channel. So take a look at that, and if there is a tier there that interests you, please get involved, sign in, and know that every pound or dollar that you put into that helps me support my efforts as a content creator in giving you more tutorials. There is so much more that I can offer you on Patreon, so take a look, and you'll be most welcome, and I'd welcome you on board. Thank you so much. In the meantime, let's look at this little watercolor all about Burmarsh. Take care, catch you all very soon, see you all in the next video. Bye bye. Okay, so let's crack on, and the drawing is a fairly simple drawing. All I've got to do is get the road angles about right, the two verges. The rest is merely trees, shrubs and things of that nature. There is a couple of houses and a little church, but they are very, very small in regards to the whole dynamic of the image itself. The area is that of a small hamlet near to my home and my studio on the Romney MArshes. It's called Burmarsh. It's got its own little manor house. It's got a lovely little pub there and a beautiful old church nestled in some trees. So it is so quintessentially English and certainly of the Romney MArshes. So the paper that I'm actually working on today is Saunders Waterford. It's a lovely heavyweight 300 pounds 640 GSM watercolor paper. It is just a great surface to work on with watercolor. So the pencil that I'm using is a mechanical pencil. I think it's from Faber-Castell, and it is a 6B lead in it. It really is remarkable for leaving some really dark marks where I want them, but a lot of them disappear when I actually put water upon them, so it's not too bad a process. Now I'm using a cocktail stick to put some the masking fluid on. The masking fluid is Schmincker's. It's lovely blue color, so you can see precisely the marks you're putting on and where you've been, and I got to let that dry in a moment, but it's just trying to depict all those lovely white blossoms from the well, I suppose they're weeds really, and some of the main flower on the top of the bushes as well. And that is just going to allow me to put a wash on without too much of a worry. I'm putting just some clear water on with a brush at the moment, trying to wet the sky up before I come in with some lovely indigo, and predominantly indigo with a little bit of cobalt in it, not too much, a little bit of alizarin too, but I really wanted a heavy broody sky, and I wanted to get this sky down fairly fast, so I used quite a bit of water and allowed the weight of it to be right down on the tree line around all the buildings, and just take that across. And then I turned the panel up the other way and decided to use a little bit of spray and allow that paint to just seep back up into the sky. It really did make for a wonderful moody wash sky, which didn't need any more doing to it than you saw then. It was very, very simply placed, and it just really worked. But it's got some wonderful flowy aspects to it which I really enjoyed, so I was quite happy with that. I used the same colour to depict the little puddles that are in the road. Now the road in reality has got a tarmac road, a modern tarmac road, but I chose to take the whole image, as it were, back a few tens of years to when it may have had cart tracks around the marsh, and these were unmade up roads and puddles in them from the rains that are sort of evident in the skies that have just gone over. I used a lot of Aureolin and a little bit of Cobalt to suggest my very pale greens. There's a lot more Aureolin than there is anything else in there, because I really wanted the sun. You know, after you get a lovely storm and the rain's gone through, and you get the sun come out, and it just makes everything sparkle. And I wanted to get that in these trees and bushes, both far and near, and along the verges too. So I put that very light colour in to contrast beautifully against the sky colour. The field is predominantly quite a cool colour green, and for that I used a little bit of Cobalt Turquoise and a little bit of Cobalt, as well as some of the Aureolin in there, keeping it nice and cool and nice and fresh. Now I'm going straight over with the deeper verge, a darker green. There's some alizarin in there, as well as other colours, and it just takes the green from a pure green and makes it a little bit darker. I'm putting a few furrows in the field. Looks like a tractor or plough has been through there. Some evidence of man has created furrows in the field itself, and it gives the field a bit of interest. So now I'm working on a darker green, more of the Cobalt Blue, but this time using some Indian Yellow in there as well, just to give myself some real dark greens working and moving forward. And as I come down towards the base of the trees, I add some darker values into that as well. And now where I put the darks on the top of the trees, I'm actually using some clear water, as it were, just to feather out some of the colour, lifting some off, so you get that gradation, that transition between lighter greens to the dark greens in a very short space of the tree itself. It's a little bit like a subtle little or mini wash, and it just helps to have that bit of clear water ready to go. I'm doing it again now, and you can see how that gives the illusion of light and dark foliage on the tree on the sunny side, as it were. Now I'm being a little bit careful. I've got a dark tree around the only house in the picture. There is a little church to the right, but that little house is part of the main street of Burmarsh. I don't think it's the pub. It's a little bit further round than that, but I'm just putting in initial steps to suggest all those lovely trees in the background, and some of the more mayflower bushes in the foreground here as well. Very dark foliage, but again I'm using water to dilute some of the areas towards the light greens. I don't want to lose my lovely Aureolin greens. I want to keep those, but I am definitely using some clear water just to give the sort of subtle transition between the two areas, and I keep doing that. And I'm going back over the darker tree there. It's the only dark part of this tree in the whole thing, but look how that really frames that beautiful house in the background. That dark tree really was a gift to allow me to have that framing going on. Now I'm going in with a bit more detail on the tree that goes towards the church. There's quite a bit of darks in there, and I want to get those sorted out, ready to carry on with. Now for the first wash on the old unmade up road. As I say, the road now is a tarmac one, but that is so boring, so man-made and clear, you know. There's no detail in it, no bit of fun. This just adds a little bit of something else to the whole picture. So that's why I chose to change the tarmac road for a unmade up road. Now the first layers are going into the house. I put a colour on, I took some of it off just to give it a staining and also an accent of the light, and when I go back in there with the roof and other bits of details, it will show up a lot more. The steeple of the church is quite a cool grey. I wanted to keep that, as well as the tower or the bell tower of the church. I let that get a very warm colour and then took some of that off, so you had another staining. Here I'm going over with a second wash over the top of all that masking fluid, which is all the plants and the weeds that are going along the river there, and I'm putting in a very warm accent just to suggest a little bit of shadow coming off of some of those cow parsleys along the edge of the ditch. And it's a lovely warm color that I'm putting in, so it's very suggestive. You can't quite tell whether it's dampness from the rain or whether it is a genuine shadow, but certainly around the puddles I've increased the coolness into that brown. So you've got a brown, but there's a little bit of blue going into that, and that will give me, or more violet, but it's giving me a little bit more of a suggested wetness around the puddles, where the water is seeping into the road surface and creating that damp area around the actual puddles themselves. I've done it a little bit more now and increased that cool, darker value that is again suggested that the puddles are there, and also that dark really shows and throws those puddles out. So now, instead of being a pale blue against the white, now they are really bright and reflecting the sky above in against the old road surface, and that's really what it is. Now I've made sure that the paper and the painting is absolutely dry, so that I can then go in, wipe all those white flower heads off, and make sure that there are no bits of masking fluid residue left on the painting. That's the last thing you want to do. Putting some more details into that little house in the distance. It's got a bright shiny roof because it's facing the sun. So this end has got the dark shadowy areas. There are a couple of little houses further on which I'm just putting in now. And don't forget, they look a bit dark, but they will dry up lighter. And that's something always to remember when you're doing watercolour, that whatever colour you put on first, it will dry up lighter. So make sure you're prepared for that, because if you go in too wishy-washy to start with, it's going to be so pale and it'll become insignificant. And you can always layer up and go in again, which is what I'm doing on the church steeple. I felt that the dark steeple wanted to show out a little bit more, and so I put another layer on. Now the white cow parsley are not actually white, they're almost a very, very subtle green colour. So subtle it's hardly noticeable. So I went over with a pale wash over the whole of that area, taking the whiteness out of the paper and giving the flowers just a green hue. More darks going into the bushes and the shrubs along the side of the road. That characteristic shape on that one that I'm working on now is born from the fact that they get a flailing machine that comes along every so often and just takes the area of growth out as it travels across the road, so that vehicles can get down there safely. So that's why it develops that funny shape. I always thought that it was something to do with the wind direction. It's not, nothing to do with that. It is merely the growing habit would be more bushy, and in a sense half of that bush is missing because of man-made cutting machines that go down there periodically and take it out and make it safe for vehicles to pass down. These roads are very narrow, and they've got ditches on each side of them. They were created by the monks a millennia ago, and they've been maintained ever since, and as a sort of network of roads around the Romney Marshes giving access. They were horse and carts, and they're not really made, some of them, for two vehicles, certainly not larger vehicles that you get in this modern day. So we are really coming towards the end of this now. I'm just putting a bit more information into these trees across the back distance. I've used the negative space of the light green to create the edges or the verges of the piece of road that's coming around and in front of them. We've still got one or two little bits to do, but essentially we are pretty much at the end of the video. We've done all of those little bits. I think it's been a delightful little video to do, but I want to finish off by, I think I'm going to put a few birds in a moment, a few crows, and just see how that looks, just to finish the video off. It makes it sort of very, very English. I'm just bringing that tree across the bell tower a little bit. A lot of the details in the window of the bell tower are missing because that tree was right across it, certainly with some of its major branches, so I kept it the same. A little bit more detail in one or two areas. There was a gap there, so I put another tree in. Actually, it didn't exist. I just needed to put something there, so another bush or shrub further back seemed to be the right answer. I'm putting a few areas of suggested bits and pieces on the cow parsley, and now I'm putting in the characteristic posts, the fence posts that we often see around the edges of the farmers' fields. They have very scanty, most of them are broken and falling down, but they go around not all but many of the edges of the fields, and between those and the road of course is the ditch which the cow parsley in this case is growing in so well. And there is also a ditch on the other side. As I say, most of the roads on the marsh are bordered by ditches, and those ditches were created, as I said earlier, by monks as irrigation to the Romney marshes and keeping them from flooding from sea. And I'm just going in with a little bit more dark. I felt that that area is deeper in shadow, and it just reinforced the immediacy of the foreground and give a lot more sense of aerial perspective. Now for those crows. They call them a murder of crows, I understand. Not the best way of describing it, but certainly I do like crows and corvids and jackdaws, and so I felt that this was a lovely scene, and it would just nicely be to put a few in at the very end and right up into that clear part of the sky. They really show up, and it does just set the whole thing off. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed it. I'm signing it now. I catch each and every one of you in the next video. Take care, all the best. Bye bye for now.
It's not my fault. You've been lying, saying that I took away your peace. Drowning by yourself, now you wanna blame me. Like you have no options. I ain't take your options. Nah, I'm not the problem. Man, that's on you, yeah.